Prefer to stand. Well, obviously the gentlemen don't speak my language. I would like to welcome you all to item number 1 is the adoption of today's agenda. Are there any objections from your side? That is obviously not the case. Then I propose to adopt the agenda as it stands. The second item are my announcements. Our meeting today is, as usual, being web streamed. We have interpretation available in the following languages: English, French, German, Italian, Greek, Spanish, Portuguese, Estonian, Lithuanian, Latvian, Hungarian, Polish, Slovak, Slovenian, Swedish, Romanian, and Bulgarian. We come to item number 3, and for this item, I would also like to welcome the Delegation for Relations with the Mashreq Countries. We are doing this item in association with the delegation. First of all, I would like to welcome the Vice President and High Representative Kaja Kallas. A warm welcome to AFET. This is your mother committee. We are very happy to already have you for the first time in AFET, so shortly after you have had your confirmation hearing. Thank you for making yourself available at such a short notice to address our committee. Dear colleagues, we can talk about everything, but we can't talk about longer than 6 o'clock. We know that the High Representative has to leave 6 o'clock sharp, so we have 55 minutes for an exchange of views. Why did I decide to invite Kaja Kallas? Well, obviously because of the situation in Syria following the fall of the Assad dictatorship. I would also like to thank a number of group coordinators who also made similar proposals. Our discussion at this extraordinary meeting, dear High Representative, is very timely because this weekend saw the fall of one of the world's most brutal dictatorships. The Assad family ruled Syria for more than 50 years, and Bashar al-Assad's reign was particularly violent. The last 13 years have been marked by bloody repression, with over 500,000 killed and over 130,000 political prisoners held in, I must say, horrendous conditions. The swiftness with which Assad's regime was in the end toppled, with limited bloodshed, is a clear sign that he did not have the support of the Syrian people, but also not of his allies, Russia and Iran. With Assad and his family now having fled Syria and a coalition of rebels holding the capital, we have entered uncertain territory. The coming days and weeks will be crucial in shaping Syria's future. Will the Syrian factions come together in dialogue to build a democratic and free Syria? Will Syrian minorities be protected and given a voice in shaping the future of the country? Will fundamental rights and international law be respected, or will chaos and fighting prevail? These are all questions where we need to find answers. That's why, without further ado, dear High Representative, let me give you the floor. We know that you are following the developments closely. You met with the EU foreign ministers yesterday. We would greatly appreciate any insights that you can give to us on the situation in Syria and the entire region, as well as on any diplomatic outreach and other actions being prepared by Team Europe. I will now give you the floor for 10 minutes.
Thank you, and it's good to be here. I think it's also important when we have such events happening, then AFET is the place where we can immediately discuss and exchange views what has happened over the weekend. Of course, our reaction on what is happening in Syria is crucial in these initial days, and this must be a message of unity, stability and support for the Syrian people that managed to liberate themselves after years of violent and tyrannical persecution. It is also the time to rebuild. So today, in particular, on International Human Rights Day, we can celebrate the UN Declaration of Human Rights and the common understanding amongst the all parties of a simple truth: who we are, wherever we are and however we live, certain aspects of human life are simply non-negotiable. And these rights that have all the human beings, they are universal, indivisible, independent and belong to us all. This day is also a reminder of the violations and risks to human rights around the globe. Now, in Syria, for 13 years, the Syrian government reigned with terror and deprived the Syrian people of their rights. Like most of you, I've been watching the footage of Sednaya prison being liberated, where thousands and thousands of people, including journalists, human rights defenders, lawyers, political activists, had been locked up arbitrarily, tortured or killed. As finally families had find their missing loved ones and grieve for those who they have lost. The fall of Assad regime is also the opportunity to redress a decade of human rights violations. All Syrians should now have the chance to know the fate of their loved ones, and my thoughts go out to all the victims of the Assad regime. The Syrian people paid a huge price for their own attempt to pursue dignity, freedom and justice. For over a decade, the people of Syria had to endure persecution from their own leader. This has now come to a sudden end, and the day has finally come to Syrian people to prepare a better future. It is a historic development, that is for sure, and we must congratulate them on bringing about their liberation. At the same time, the transition will present huge challenges in Syria and in the region. First, there are legitimate concerns about the risks of sectarian violence, extremist resurgence, and the governance vacuum, all of which must be averted. We must avoid a repeat of the horrific scenarios of Iraq, Libya, and Afghanistan. Secondly, the rights of all Syrians, including those of many minority groups, must be protected. And thirdly, it is crucial to preserve the territorial integrity of Syria and to respect its independence, its sovereignty, as well as the state institutions. And here I want to strongly support the work of UN Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen. He will have a very delicate role of convincing different stakeholders to engage in an inclusive Syria-led dialogue on all key issues. This will ensure an orderly and peaceful and inclusive transition based on human rights, fundamental freedoms and tolerance. And I also spoke to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres today about the UN-led process. What has happened in Syria has many wider repercussions. It has shown the world that those who have backed Assad's brutal regime, Russia and Iran, could neither afford to do it any longer, nor had any interest of being present in the aftermath. They are weakened, distracted and overstretched in other theaters in the broader Middle East, but also in Ukraine. For Putin and the Iranian regime, the fall of Assad is a huge blow to both. It is important that regional and international partners work together to support Syria now. Our engagement in the framework of the G7 and the neighboring countries, including the Gulf, Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, Turkey, and Israel, is crucial to address shared challenges, and these will be some of the key interlocutors also ensuring the stabilization of Syria. Now, in this regard, I have already spoken to the key foreign ministers in the region. We can now contribute to shaping the future of Syria and for the region. And as we support Syria through its transition, it is important to recognize the need for an inclusive rebuilding process involving all minorities, as well as women and girls. The protection of all Syrians, including the many minority groups, is paramount. When I talked to other foreign ministers, they also had a big worry about this. In this regard, no effort should be spared in the accountability for crimes committed in Syria, including crimes against humanity. The EU has been supporting several initiatives to this aim, including a UN framework, and we will also continue to do so. Syrians deserve to know the truth and have justice. Justice and accountability are the only way forward to national reconciliation. And as humanitarian needs continue to grow, as one of the main humanitarian donors to the Syrian people inside and outside the country, the European Union is closely monitoring displacement patterns, and we will continue to support UNHCR and partners in resuming life-saving assistance. To briefly conclude, it is our role as international partners to accompany Syrian people in piecing together a shattered society. There's a lot to work ahead and many doubts and questions persist. This is why we will be carefully and closely monitoring the situation, and I will also remain in close contact with the interlocutors. So thank you, and I'm ready to answer questions as much as I know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Vice President, High Representative. This AFET meeting is organised in association with the Delegation for Relations with the Mashreq Countries. So I will now give the floor to the chair of this delegation, Mr. Laurent Castillo, for 2 minutes. Please stick to the speaking time.
Merci, je le respecterai.
Thank you very much. I will do that. High Representative, colleagues, let me begin by thanking the chairman of AFET, Mr. David McAllister, for having organised this meeting and for having included the Delegation for Relations with the Mashreq Countries. I'd like to thank you, ma'am, High Representative, for your presence as well. Now, since March 2011, civil war has caused over 500,000 deaths in Syria. And as you said, over half the Syrian population has gone abroad to Lebanon, Jordan, etc. Now, the fall of the Bashar al-Assad era means that we're moving into a new phase for Syria, but we are nevertheless concerned about Islamists in particular, because the main terrorist organisation was linked to the murderer of Samuel Paty in France, the teacher who was decapitated in 2020. The European Union needs to learn from the errors made in Iraq and Libya. And we have to, as you say, firstly ensure the protection of all minorities, in particular Christians, but also other non-majority denominations. International humanitarian law needs to be respected. That is crucial. Subsequently, we need to anticipate the risks of a migration crisis. If Islamists take power, there could be a major destabilizing effect on the Mashreq region, but also on the European continent. And then finally, we need to support the political transition in Syria, preserving its territorial integrity and its sovereignty. Many European member states are looking to cooperate with the new regime under certain conditions. Now, ma'am, which conditions would you set in order for Europe to cooperate with the new rulers of Syria? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Now we will hear from our Standing Rapporteur for Syria, our colleague Nathalie Loiseau, who will exceptionally intervene remotely as approved by a majority of coordinators. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mrs. High Representative, and thank you for having me online. I'm departing to Tbilisi later, and I could not be in Brussels tonight. Well, this is the end of one of the bloodiest dictatorships we have witnessed. It's not a dictatorship since 2011. It's been 54 years of dictatorship, because before Bashar al-Assad there was Hafez al-Assad. And let's admit that we did little to help liberate Syria. The EU attitude was at best passive and at worst complacent with Bashar. I know of some member states who were pushing for a normalization of relations with Bashar with very little foresight, and I know some in our parliament who have travelled to Damascus and shaken hands with this bloody dictator, and that's a shame for the whole parliament. Now we have to witness a new reality with hope, but also with concerns. We must engage with the new Prime Minister and come with clear messages. There is a way for a new Syria, inclusive and peaceful. We can provide support through the lifting of sanctions and participating in reconstruction, and also fighting against impunity against perpetrators of atrocities. But it comes with conditions from our side, and this condition should be that Syrian authorities commit to reject terrorism, and we have to be able to continue fighting against Daesh in Syria. Make sure that camps like Al-Hol and Roj remain under control of the Syrian democratic forces. Live in peace with all its neighbors, and respect for all components of Syria, like Kurds, Druze, and Christians who are concerned. I just had a video meeting with Christians in Aleppo and Damascus. So what steps will you take? What about women's rights? Can you just tell us how you see the coming weeks? Thank you.
Thank you, Nathalie, and safe travels to Tbilisi. Now we come to our coordinators, 2 minutes each, and we kick off with Michael Gahler for the EPP.
Thank you very much. I think it is for all of us, but also especially for the people of Syria, not only a sigh of relief, but a real liberation after 54 years, as it was referred to. And I think now the majority has to be protected, and most of the minorities, because almost all groupings in Syria have been repressed by this terrible regime. Now the question, there are many questions that need to be asked now. First important question is, do we so to say, assess the words that we hear from Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, that he departed from Al-Qaeda in 2016, and that he is clearly not an Al-Qaeda or terrorist or jihadist agenda. Have we got an assessment in this regard? Next question is, of course, the other in the regions. What do we hear from Turkey? Should we not definitely call on Turkey also to let the Syrians, including the Kurds in Syria, now be arranging their affairs inside Syria and not have additional external influence in this regard? I heard that Israel was bombarding over the night ammunition from the Syrian army. Fine, fair enough. I have no problem with that. But I think also Israel now having the big enemy lost, which role do we see in this regard? Are we in contact? Did these new de facto regime that we have there, Mr. al-Jawlani, did they already send a message to us as EU or to one of our member states what their immediate plans are? Have they invited us? What is our current immediate agenda? Humanitarian aid, of course, but then something later, like a conference on the reconstruction. What are your ideas? Thank you.
For the S&D, I give the floor to Mr. Marco Tacchino.
Grazie, Presidente. Parlerò italiano.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'd like to thank you, Vice President, for having found the time to come and hold this meeting with us today. We're now talking about a country that has really suffered for 13 years under this humanitarian crisis, and as we've heard, it's been under decades of Ba'athist dictatorship. But what I think is key here is we need clear objectives. We need wide-ranging international support for a genuine democratic transition for the country, which, as you said, respects the fundamental rights of all the Syrian people, including minorities. But we also need to guarantee the territorial integrity and unity of Syria. We need to ensure that humanitarian assistance can reach the country, because the country is suffering through one of the greatest crises in history. We also have to ensure that war crimes and crimes against humanity are dealt with. We can't have peace without justice. And we also need to ensure the safe return of refugees. It's only if Syria becomes a safe country that we will be able to send asylum seekers in the EU back. We can't simply use this as an excuse to reject asylum seekers. I think in the light of what's happened, we need to try and clarify certain elements, because this is a developing situation. We haven't seen any serious democratic transition procedure. What we've basically seen is al-Jalali taking power, and we've also seen major accumulation of weapons and power in the hands of HTS. We need to ensure that this moves through to a democratically credible process of transition. Now, in addition, in Europe, we're seeing a trend towards suspending asylum requests from Syria, and you're going to be meeting the Foreign Affairs Council soon. So my question to you is, how are you going to coordinate the work of member states, which isn't all that coordinated at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. For the Patriots, Sebastian Stöteler.
Thank you, Chair. Chaos in the Middle East is almost complete. Different ethnic groups were fighting their common enemy, and the only good thing that came from it is that they won. But like all Games of Thrones, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and when my enemy is gone, the enemy of my enemy is going to be my enemy. So they're going to fight each other, probably. The Kurds have said that they're afraid of HTS going to fight them. HTS already freed prisoners from the Assad regime, but the Kurds are still keeping prisoners, most of them jihadis from EU as well, that went to Syria during ISIS-Daesh time. HTS is listed as a terror organization. This al-Jolani guy most recently expressed himself a little bit more liberal, but I'm not really comfortable with it because of his former al-Nusra background, and the roots of HTS are still the same. What are they going to do with the imprisoned jihadis? I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We already see images and videos of young females in Syria allegedly being abducted at this time. So the proof is in the pudding. We'll see how this goes. The only thing I think we're certain of is that new migration flows are going to start, either to Syria or either from Syria to Lebanon or to Turkey. So how are we going to address that? Different EU, and I know this is not a migration debate, but different EU member states have already decided not to go on with Syrian refugee status and assessing the situation as it goes. So how is the EU going to help the member states with this? Thank you very much.
Thank you. For the ECR, I have Adam Bielan on my list, but he's not present. Who would like to take the floor for the ECR? Please. Parakalo.
First of all, I want to say that I agree with what you mentioned in your introductory statement, that those who supported Assad have been weakened. And we can see it from this example, that they have been weakened. But after that, you said that Syria has been liberated. And I wonder if we have forgotten that the Free Syrian Army was the one who cooperated in the past with the Islamic State, with ISIS. Those who are responsible for many attacks, terrorist attacks, at various European countries. I would wonder if this would be a normal transition or if it will create enormous problems for Europe, and whether we're going to see a resurgence of extremism. Mrs. Kallas, you said that you met some foreign ministers of some countries who are in the neighboring region. I wonder, did you meet also the foreign minister of the Republic of Cyprus and the foreign minister of Greece? These are the first countries who are influenced by the migration and any migration wave that could be created by the situation. I would like to recall that Turkey, for a few days ago, you said it's a partner. You said that Turkey is a partner when you met Mr. Fidan. they weaponize in Greece, in Cyprus and Bulgaria the migration. They use it as a weapon. You said that Assad did not have the support of the people. I would like to raise something that we should all think. We had the Islamists who were behind in Syria, and they created the situation. They were always present. And we have to bear that in mind with the migration problem and what problems we might face if we have any migrational flows in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. For Renew, I understand that Barry Andrews will speak on behalf of his group.
Thank you very much. I had just want to say that, first of all, I join with you in celebrating that this is a joyous moment for the people of Syria. And we shouldn't forget that. I know there's nervousness and worry about what the next steps are, and that's all natural and normal. Last March, just a few months ago, I was one of just 8 people outside the Russian embassy in Dublin protesting the Russian involvement in the Syrian civil war. And I just want to pay tribute to everybody who stood foursquare behind the campaign for justice in Syria for the last 13 or 14 years. Those who never entertained the idea of normalisation, and many did. And I think to pay tribute to the NGOs, the Syrians, the national, the international NGOs that stood by Syrians, because the reality is we turned our back on Syria. We continue the flow of humanitarian aid, that is true, but we did turn our back on Syria. So it's great that there is now a moment, an opportunity. So there's 3 things I want to mention. First of all, Nathalie already mentioned sanctions, and we have to review sanctions. We also have to consider there are humanitarian exemptions to sanctions, and we need to extend those humanitarian exemptions, something that can be done quickly, even before we review sanctions themselves. Secondly, I would agree with the S&D speaker that we need to really find a way to reconcile. On the one hand, we are saying that Syria continues to be an unsafe country, but we have EU member states suspending the right to apply for asylum. And these 2 positions are not reconcilable, in my view. And I think the European Union needs to be very clear about that. I think the other issue that I would like to raise with you is the question of impunity. And again, the European Parliament passed a very, very clear resolution with overwhelming support on the question of impunity. So I'd ask you to continue to invest in those organisations that are preserving evidence with a view to future prosecution. Thank you.
Thank you. For the Greens, I give the floor to Ms. Hannah Neumann.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, I would like to thank everyone who made this quick exchange possible here in the Parliament. The fact that al-Assad is gone is good news, full stop. The question now is if one brutal regime will be followed by another brutal regime, or if Syrians will be able to use the current opportunity to move things to the better. And our role as the European Union simply is to support them in the latter direction with whatever we can. And I fully agree with the proposals my colleague Barry just made. And our job is to be happy with our Syrian friends that change is possible after so many years. And I have to say, I'm quite ashamed that some people in Europe had nothing better to do than to start a debate about resending people to Syria just an hour after Assad was gone. Colleagues, let me be very clear. We need all political energy right now to bring stability and ensure that Syria becomes a safe place for women and minorities, Kurds, Alawite, Christians alike now. And this will be difficult. It will take months, maybe years, and only then it makes sense to start talking about sending Syrians back. Except for one aspect, and I would be very glad if you could raise this on Monday also with the foreign ministers, where we should discuss asylum and migrations. Many Syrians that fled after 2015 are members of the democratic Syrian opposition. They have now strong ties to Europe. They fully embrace the values that we want to see flourish in the new Syria. They are highly knowledgeable, and we need them in Syria right now. But our asylum regulation prevents them from going. They have the choice to either leave their families in Europe, because who would resettle children to Syria right now, to go to Syria and lose their asylum status in Europe and maybe never be able to see their families again if things go wrong, or they stay here and we lose them as positive agents of change on the ground. So our current asylum rules prevent many Syrians, democratic Syrians that we need in Syria, from doing what they want to do, to support the process and what we want them to do to support the process in a democratic way. And maybe we can find flexible aller-retour schemes for them for a few months so everybody can do and is free to support the transition process that we all want to see happening. And maybe you can raise this Monday so we find a good solution.
Thank you. For the left, Mr. Danilo Della Valle on behalf of Mark Botenga. There you go.
Sì, buonasera. Salve Presidente.
Yes, thank you. Well, we've got this new political phase in Syria now that started a few days ago. Many people are being very enthusiastic about it. For us, it almost seems like the result of an agreement, given how fast it happened. Now, these so-called rebels, and they're led by al-Jilani, who's changed his name, I think. He was the founder of the al-Nusra Front, and he was the right-hand man of al-Qaeda in Syria. So, as I was saying, this advance seems to be the result of some kind of an agreement. And what we're worried about now is understanding how we can look after minorities. Because we're already hearing about extreme episodes of violence. We just heard a report a few minutes ago, actually, which reported on 54 soldiers. Okay, they're not a minority, but 54 fleeing soldiers in Homs who were captured and executed just a few minutes ago, I'm hearing. And this comes from the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, this piece of news. In addition, Israel is currently taking advantage of the confusion to invade parts of the Golan Heights and is bombing some research centres and Syrian weapons factories. So we're seeing further violations of international law by Netanyahu, and that only risks adding fuel to the flames of a complex situation. So how are we intending to intervene in this situation? What does the European Union intend to do? Basing ourselves on the UN resolution on the territorial integrity of Syria. So we've got this new situation in Syria. How come the EU is now declaring it a safe country? And we now no longer have Assad in power. He was a dictator, and he was several times accused of violating human rights. Well, how do we intend to intervene on requests that are blocked? Thank you.
Stoyanov.
Thank you, Chair. I will speak in Bulgarian. Събитията в Сирия вероятно ще имат сериозни последици за регионалната.
The events in Syria will most probably have very serious consequences for the European security. The fall of the Assad regime creates many challenges which require a strategic answer on the part of Europe. The empowerment of the radical Islamist groups that took Assad down, all this makes the situation very unpredictable, and there's a risk of spreading of all conflicts into Europe. From 2013 on, we've spent billions of euro to help Syria, but this money wasn't used in the right way, and the EU was marginalized as far as finding solution to different international crises is concerned. We think that we will now be witnessing new migration waves, which will in its turn lead to serious risks. Let me remind you of UN Resolution 2254. There, the people who took the power are described as terrorists. We should not allow Syria to become a cradle of terrorism, a place which will create many crises for Europe. I'm afraid that the EU and the Parliament are simply looking at what's happening in the Middle East but doing nothing. Syria is the cradle of Christianity. We have 2 million Christians living there. They are now threatened, and we should protect them. I would also like to mention the other ethnic groups like the Druze. for example. And on the territory of Syria, we have the Assyrians as well, the most ancient Christian people. So we're facing the danger of genocide and ethnic killing. So what are the measures you will take in all these respects? Thank you.
Thank you. To conclude this first round, I give the floor to the chairs of our two subcommittees. First, Munir Satouri for droit.
Okay. Je me lance.
Okay. Well, I'll speak on behalf of the subcommittee droit. Thank you very much, High Representative. The events in Syria show, if it needed to be shown, the importance of the UN and international justice mechanisms. It is now up to these instances to support Syria on the road to freedom and democracy. There is an emergency today, which is to gather proof and data, and teams are ready to go on a mission on the ground. It's an imperative and a prerequisite for peace. We have to support the justice process that is based or should be based on truth and reparation for victims. History teaches us that transitional justice mechanisms are useful to reconstruction as long as they're carried out in an inclusive way and give voice to the victims. And when I say victims, I mean victims on all sides, from all factions. Protecting minorities is an essential need. Do you consider that Syria is today a safe country? Some member states have already communicated around sending back refugees. To aspire to reconciliation, it's essential that all minorities gather around a table, and the EEAS has organized a number of conferences year on year on the future of Syria. That future that has been wished for is now becoming a reality before our eyes. What response do you bring to bear to this emergency situation that we see today? Thank you.
And finally, I give the floor to the chair of our SEDE subcommittee, Ms. Streck-Zimmermann.
Ja, herzlichen Dank. Ich spreche Deutsch.
Thank you very much. I'll speak German as a speaker. Thank you very much, Chair. High Representative, you've only just taken office, and there we are. Something happened that many didn't believe possible. Within 10 days, Assad's regime was swept away. The interesting thing is that both Russia, as well as Iran, and Hezbollah did not take action for various reasons, but we're also seeing that Russia is increasingly focuses its forces on Ukraine. This has triggered something, well, momentous, and it's good news. We were dealing with a despot who will be leaving, who during his reign amassed wealth and butchered his people. However, the situation remains volatile. My question is the following. This is a good opportunity for Europe to step up to the plate. We might be able to dispatch a mission and to provide a safe haven to seekers of exile. There are many who have fled, who were influential on the ground. So I was wondering, could you give us an idea of what we could actually do realistically, and for Europe to really rise to the occasion and fill this vacuum in a positive manner?
Kollegin, dear Kaja Kallas, shall I give you now the floor that you have the first round and then we open the floor later for Catch the Eye, or shall I give the floor now to a few more colleagues and then you do one final round? I'll leave it in your hands.
No, just then I have less time to answer, but you tell me.
I think you should have a round first now.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for this exchange of views and the points that you brought up. I think several of you brought the issues that also the regional actors are quite worried about. I mean, one is that the HTS has not. Has been the organization that has been, not the most peaceful one. So the question for many regional actors is whether they have now changed. But the regional actors are saying that we should do all the international players as well as the regional actors that to keep the calm, to keep from another civil war, to keep from radicalization, to protect the minorities that many of you addressed. This is a big worry because we know in Syria there are so many different groups, and there is also worry that it doesn't go to retaliation and revenge from other side. So and this is, I understand also the messages that everybody is giving them so that really they are judged by not their words but their deeds. So the coming days, the coming weeks are definitely crucial to see whether this goes to the right direction. That also applies to the territorial integrity of Syria and how we can help them to maintain and start to build up their country. So that it's unified, it's all inclusive for all the minorities and different groups. And so far, many of you said the Syrian people are genuinely happy that the Assad regime was taken down. So this we have to understand and cherish as well. But of course, everybody's looking into the future. How will this work out? So the new people are judged by their deeds, definitely, and seeing that these things will go to the right direction. And of course, it's also the question for some countries in the region that they don't start to pull the blanket on their side when it comes to different groups. When we talk about the Kurds or we talk about different minorities in different parts of Syria. So this is what everybody is signaling to them, that please take this into account. And also the countries that are in Arab League have told very clearly that, the seat for Syria in the Arab League is not for free. It is not that you are immediately admitted to that place around the table, but you also have to show that you are, trying to really build up the country. And the worries are what some of you have said as well. The radicalization or weaponization of religion as well in Syria. So, all these messages have also been submitted to HTS and by the regional actors specifically, and we have to have the unity of message, I think, there, so that they could really have the democratic transition. No civil war, no chaos, no revenge, no retaliation, all of this. Many of you addressed the issue of refugees. What some countries have already said, that they see the return of refugees. Turkey already sees the return of refugees. Why I'm stressing the unity and also the protection of minorities is that we don't want to see, new wave of refugees from different groups from Syria. So I think it is in the interest of all the countries in the region, including also European Union, so we can work together there. On your question, yes, I've spoken to the Minister of Cyprus very, very intensively during the weekend. So yes, we are in close contact also with the member states. And on Monday, we're going to have the Foreign Affairs Council where all the foreign ministers are, and we can discuss, and we will discuss Syria and our approach also there. Then, of course, in humanitarian aid, European Union has been the biggest giver of humanitarian aid, and for us, it's important that it reaches, the NGOs that help people on the ground, and not the forces that we are not really certain about still. I mean, like I said, the coming days, the coming weeks will be key to assess whether this all goes to the right direction. And we, together with the countries in the region, will keep a very, very strict eye on this, whether it goes the way we want to go. So I think what you also mentioned, stability is important. That is what everybody wants to see in Syria, because also when we talk about return of the refugees, when we also talk about the reconstruction of Syria, then we need, a stabilization, a stable country to also be able to, bring investors and also to rebuild the country. So are we there right now? I wouldn't say so. I mean, it's just over the weekend everything has happened. So, but definitely we have to, support the country so that it goes to the right direction, and help them so that, the refugees are able to return. We are also able to provide aid for the reconstruction so that there will be jobs and the life could, be good in Syria, so that, it takes the burden off from Europe and the neighboring countries when it comes to refugees. And what I want to stress once again is that we also want to work so that and keep an eye on this, that we wouldn't have any, mistreatment of other minorities in the country, that there are many, so that we wouldn't have, another flow of just refugees from different national groups. My handwriting is terrible. Can you read my handwriting? No. So some of you said it's, also the terrorism and how we can prevent this. I think the cooperation with the regional actors is really the key, so that, there is no radicalization, no weaponization of religion. We know, many Arab countries who have also expressed this, that, the way to exercise the religion is not the way in some countries that is really put on people how to really act, and they want to also keep this in Syria, that there is a freedom of religion and freedom of really exercising your religion, which is also important for the Muslim countries. So in a nutshell, it is very, very early to tell whether this goes to the right direction, but I think, the first signals are good, but we are not rushing into any kind of arrangements yet if we don't have certainty. But I think it is important that we keep close contact with the regional actors and all the international actors to help Syria so that they can, build a normal life for the people. Thanks.
Thank you, dear Kaja Kallas. We now come to the second round. We have more than 25 requests to take the floor. Obviously, you can't all get the floor because at some stage, Kaja will have to leave us. You need to indicate when, and So I will now give the floor to 1 minute each for the speakers, and the first for the EPP is Juliana Zovko.
Right,
1 minute.
Okay, thank you very much. And please, can you just answer to me, how do you think that the External Action Service will provide us an answer to this dire situation for religious minorities in Syria and the ongoing propaganda war that we are not doing anything to protect them? I mean, are we going to pay more to Erdogan, who is behind these moves and he is celebrating? Who is going to protect this religious minority? Because this propaganda war will only play into Putin's hand. And is External Action Service finally going to take into account the issues of persecuted Christians in the Middle East? Are you going to change that as a High Representative? Thank you. And not just give it money and expect that we will that they will change. Fundamentalists and jihadists will never change.
Thank you. Next is Hannah Yalul.
Thank you very much. I hope I can express what I want to say. Thank you for being here today, Ms. Kallas. Well, I mean, we should protect the minorities in Syria, but not all the opposition is jihadist to Bashar al-Assad. There are a lot of secular forces within the coalition of the Syrians that we have to take into account. And it is true that the Jabhat Tahrir al-Sham tried to make themselves far from the jihadist branch of al-Qaeda, which they were in the past, and we need to monitor very close. Nobody wants any kind of Islamist government in Syria, but we cannot say that all the opposition is Islamist jihadists, which it is not true. And another thing is that it was commented before, it's very good that now the Iranian influence in the area is gone. Hezbollah is completely terminated. We hope so. And that means that a lot of Islamist Shia militias are, of course, jihadists are out of Syria, which it is okay. Nobody talk about the Syrians' rights to decide. We need peace, democracy, and the Syrians' rights to decide on their own territory, which is a major issue. And I was very pleased to hear you talking about the integrity of Syria. Israel have occupied the demilitarized area of the Golan Heights. Nobody talk about this, and this is not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. For the PFE group, one speaker, Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ma'am, good afternoon. Thank you for coming. This is a very serious situation. One evil is gone, another one came. I have no doubts about what these people can do. We know them from the past at al-Nusra, at ISIS, as al-Qaeda, what they did against women, against children, against their opponents. So I have no clear idea that there will be a democratic force in Syria. The big powers of the region are already involved. This was the result of a deal. Turkey is already invading Kurdish, as we speak, Kurdish lands. Iran is already on board. And of course, the Muslim Brotherhood struck a deal with Iran in Doha. So what they are doing now is creating a terrorist state at the doors of Europe. And what I ask you, ma'am, is how are you going to deal with that? What are the means that a weak European Union, today's European Union, has to face this situation? Thank you.
Thank you. 1 minute, Mr. Fragos.
Thank you very much, Chairman. In Syria, we should strive to strengthen our natural allies. First of all, Christians, Greeks, Armenians, Maronites, Syrians, Kurds, and then Druze and Alawites. A big part of the Christians are the grandchildren of those who left Turkey to escape from the Holocaust of the Christians. We have to do whatever we can not to go under the boot of the jihadists who are moved by Turkey. And they have suffered from slaughters. Northeastern Syria should be the first independent Kurdish land. The Druze and the Alawites should stay in their lands. The end of the government on Assad doesn't mean that we have to have a Turkish Islamist occupation of Syria, but we want to return Syria to the Syrians and the return of the Syrians to Syria. And a very frightening scenario would be if the Turkish Islamists prevailed on the ports of Syria that will decide about the Mediterranean policy of that country. We shouldn't allow this to happen. Thank you.
Hilde Woutmans.
Well, thank you very much, because I wanted to speak as a coordinator, but you skipped me. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Kaja.
Hilde, I don't want to be pedantic, but I was informed that Barry Andrews would speak on your behalf. But now I'm happy to give you the floor.
Thank you very much. So I can take my 2 minutes. Thank you. I'm very glad, Kaja, that you say I will support the country, but it's too early to tell what direction it's into. What I just wanted to ask you, because you said, yeah, we're not rushing into any arrangement. Shouldn't we consider to go fast rather than wait until we are sure of everything? It's just a question, because I'm really wondering, if you wait too long, don't you fear that maybe other countries will pop in and it will not be Europe, like China or Iran? Because the only thing that we want, that Europe wants for Syria, is stability. And so I'm really wondering, shouldn't you go to Damascus? Shouldn't we send a political dialogue? Shouldn't we go with you to Damascus? I really think waiting can also be a wrong signal, but I don't have the solution. But I wonder what your answer is on that.
Thank you. And finally, the last two speakers, Luca Orlandi.
I can't answer then.
No?
You see the clock, please. I have 1 minute. I'd really have to leave.
Okay.
We are here for the very beginning. We deserve 1 minute.
Well, look, I'm here with 20 further requests, and the High Representative is saying he has to leave in 1 minute. What shall I do?
Ask him politely to give us 2 minutes.
Please. So, how long can you stay? You're seeing that everyone's going to beat me up as soon as you've gone.
We want her to come back, so be nice.
Pardon?
We want her to come back, so be nice.
Let's have half a minute.
Okay, so obviously she has to go now, so I give the floor to the High Representative.
No, just got the note that it's agreed that it's a plenary debate on Tuesday on Syria as well, so I guess we can discuss this even further. But yeah, sorry, because it was, I mean, the schedule is very tight, and therefore I have to be really quick on answering. The religious minorities, yes, this is a great concern, not only for us, but all the regional players, because, this is, the different minorities that there are. So here I really see that we can cooperate, and the messages that we give out, not only with us, but also the Gulf countries and the countries around, to Syrians who have very, very close contacts, is important, that it is in everybody's interest, really, to protect the minorities. And of course, if we join our forces, I think we are stronger in this regard, and we can, do our part. What comes to the impunity and justice, I think this is very important, that people in Syria, the victims of the regime, also see the punishment for those crimes committed before. But of course, it takes time, because it can't happen overnight. Then the question on Israel, I've also been in contact with the Israel minister, and I mean, although the person who asked this has already left, then I mean, they informed also the UN Security Council of what they are doing. So it's of course, everybody in the region are also worried about their own security, what comes out of this. But it's United Nations Security Council discussed this, their steps. Last but not least, this is important. It is in the interest of European Union, the stability of the region, the stability of the country, but it's also in the interest of all the countries around. And that's why I was over the weekend in constant contact with different ministers from different countries in the region, to really put together the messages that we are delivering together, because together if we have the unity of messages, and this is important also, what I said in the beginning, that no country is pulling the cover to their side, seeing this opportunity now, because there's chaos, but still it is in the interest of everybody that there is no civil war on no new basis. So this is what we have to, work for together with the regional partners. It is in the interest that we don't have, more refugees coming. It is in the interest of the region that, Syria is able to reconstruct itself, and of course that the minorities are protected, that there is stability, no revenge, and the country continues to really unify all the religious minorities as well as the national minorities that are there. And it's very early right now to tell whether this is going to happen. One is the words and the promises, the other is the deeds, and we are definitely looking at the deeds together with the interlocutors from the region to see that it will go to the right direction. And we are not waiting. That's why we are working together with the regional partners to really, right now what we have is the message that we have to bring the same message and to try to really coordinate with everybody so that, the message is strong, because alone European Union is not doing anything. Together with the regional actors, I think we are stronger, and that's why we have put the emphasis really there, because just going without the message, without a clear understanding whether this goes to the right direction is I think not the right thing. But it's important that we help everybody on board that it does go to the right direction. So as I say, we can't do this alone. We can only do this with the regional actors. Thanks. 4 minutes.
Right. Thank you, High Representative Vice President, for being with us just 10 days after you took office on the 1st of December. We look forward to welcoming you to our committee frequently in the next 5 years. Thanks to all of you for your contributions, and apologies that in 1 minute, in 1 hour, I simply cannot give all colleagues the floor. I close this meeting, but before that I announce that the dates of our next meetings will be the 12th of December from 2:45 to 3:15, and on the 16th of December, 7 to 8:30 in Strasbourg. The meeting is closed.